NTRO, who are you? Without what you do, not your title, not your grades, not your income, not your followers, not your achievements. If everything you have accomplished disappeared tomorrow, who would remain? This question terrifies people more than failure, because failure still allows you to try again. But the absence of identity, that's something else. We live in a world where achievement is not just something we pursue, it's something we become. And when your identity becomes your achievement, you may win the world, but slowly lose yourself. Part 1 THE Fusion. From childhood, we are named by performance. You're the smart one. You're the athletic one. You're the creative one. You're the responsible one. These labels feel harmless, encouraging, even. But they plant something subtle and dangerous, the belief that who you are equals what you produce. A child praised only for winning learns that love is conditional. A teenager admired for intelligence learns that mistakes threaten belonging. An adult celebrated for success learns that rest feels like disappearance. Achievement becomes oxygen, and without oxygen, you panic. Slowly, identity fuses with output. You don't say, I succeeded. You say, I am successful. You don't say, I failed. You say, I am a failure. Language reveals fusion, and fusion removes distance. When there's no distance between you and your results, every setback feels like death. Part 2 EGO attachment. The ego is not evil. It's a structure, a narrative center that tells you who you are. But the ego is fragile. It survives on comparison. It feeds on validation. It demands evidence. When your identity is built on achievement, the ego becomes addicted to proof. More money, more recognition, more productivity, more applause. Because applause confirms existence, the ego whispers, if I stop achieving, I stop mattering. And so you don't stop, even when exhausted, even when empty, even when numb. You continue not because you love the pursuit, but because you fear the void. The ego cannot tolerate being nobody. It would rather be exhausted and admired than peaceful and invisible. Part 3 THE Invisible Burnout. Burnout is not just physical exhaustion, it's existential fatigue. It happens when your soul can't keep up with your performance. When identity equals achievement, rest becomes guilt. If you rest, you are lazy. If you pause, you are falling behind. If you slow down, someone else is surpassing you. Burnout doesn't always look dramatic. Sometimes it looks like waking up without enthusiasm, achieving something, and feeling nothing, constant anxiety despite success, irritation without clear cause, emptiness after milestones. You reach the goal, and instead of joy, there is silence, because the goal was never about fulfillment. It was about preserving identity, and once achieved, the ego immediately searches for the next ladder, because standing still feels like dissolving. Burnout is the body's protest against identity imprisonment. It says, I cannot carry the weight of being your proof of worth. Part 4 Identity Erosion. Here is the paradox. When you cling to achievement as identity, you don't strengthen yourself, you erode yourself. Because identity built on performance has no stable core. Imagine a house built entirely on applause. What happens when the crowd leaves? Who are you on a quiet Sunday with no tasks? Who are you when you're sick and cannot produce? Who are you when nobody is watching? If those moments feel unbearable, it's not because you're weak. It's because you've never been allowed to exist without proving. Over time, something subtle happens. You lose contact with intrinsic desires. You no longer know what you like, only what performs well. You no longer ask, what moves me? You ask, what advances me? This is identity erosion, not dramatic collapse, but slow disconnection. You become highly functional and internally hollow. Part 5 THE Culture OF Performance. We don't exist in isolation. Our culture worships visible success. Metrics define worth. Followers, net worth, productivity, titles, rankings, even self-improvement becomes performance. Meditation to optimize output, gym to enhance status, networking to leverage advantage. Everything becomes instrumental. Nothing is allowed to simply be. And in this environment, detaching identity from achievement feels almost rebellious. Because if you are not striving, you are irrelevant. But consider this. A tree does not prove its worth by growing faster than other trees. It grows because growth is natural. Humans, however, learn to measure growth comparatively. Comparison distorts identity. When your value depends on outperforming others, peace becomes impossible because someone will always be ahead. And if your identity depends on being ahead, you live in permanent threat. Part 6 THE Fear OF Nothingness. Underneath ego attachment lies something deeper. Fear of nothingness. If I am not my success, am I anything at all? This question is terrifying because it confronts existential emptiness. Philosophers have wrestled with this for centuries. If identity is not anchored in achievement, where does it anchor? In awareness? In character? In presence? In being? Modern life rarely gives space to explore this. Silence is avoided. Stillness is numbed, because in stillness, identity cracks. And when it cracks, uncertainty appears. But here is the truth. The void you fear is not annihilation. It is possibility. When achievement no longer defines you, you are not erased. You are expanded. You become something prior to performance, something quieter, something harder to quantify, something real. Part 7 THE Mask. When identity fuses with achievement, you wear a mask. The competent one, the ambitious one, the high performer, the genius, the leader. Masks are useful socially, but dangerous psychologically, because eventually you must maintain them. You cannot be tired. You cannot doubt. You cannot admit confusion, because that would contradict the identity. And so you perform even in private. You answer emails when exhausted. You train when injured. You push when broken. The mask becomes heavier, but removing it feels like social death. Who will you be without it? Will people stay? Will respect remain? Will you still be admired? The fear of losing admiration keeps the mask glued to your face, even when it suffocates you. Part 8 THE Achievement Trap. Achievement itself is not the enemy. The trap is dependency. Healthy achievement says, I pursue excellence because it expresses me. Unhealthy attachment says, I must pursue excellence or I am nothing. The difference is subtle but profound. One is expression, The other is survival. When achievement becomes survival, every setback becomes existential. A lost deal is not a business event, it is identity damage. A bad grade is not feedback, it is self collapse. A rejection is not circumstantial, it is proof of unworthiness. This is why high achievers often feel extreme emotional swings, because the stakes are not practical, they are psychological. Part 9 WHOERE. Why OU without doing? Imagine a scenario. No career, no titles, no audience, no obligations, just you. What remains? Perhaps discomfort, perhaps relief, perhaps confusion. Most people have never met themselves without performance. They have met themselves striving. They have met themselves competing. They have met themselves achieving, but not simply being. And being feels unfamiliar because modern identity is activity based, but ancient philosophy suggests something radical. You are not what you do. You are the awareness in which doing happens. Achievements are events. Identity, at its deepest, is presence. Presence does not increase when you win. It does not decrease when you fail. It simply is. Part 10 THE cost OF constant ascent. Constant ascent has a cost. Relationships become transactional. Conversations become strategic. Time becomes currency. Moments become investments. When identity is tied to upward movement, horizontal living feels like waste. But horizontal living, friendship, laughter, aimless walks, reflection is where depth resides. Without depth, success becomes altitude without ground. You rise higher, but feel less stable, and the higher you rise without grounding, the greater the fear of falling, because falling would not just mean loss. It would mean exposure, exposure of the fact that you never learned who you were without climbing. Part 11 Detachment without apathy. Detaching identity from achievement does not mean abandoning ambition. It means changing the relationship. You can build, you can strive, you can compete, but from wholeness, not deficiency, from expression, not desperation. When identity is stable, achievement becomes play, serious play, but still play. Failure hurts, but does not shatter. Success excites, but does not inflate, because you are not inside the result, you are behind it. Part 12 THE quiet self, beneath ego, beneath performance, beneath titles. There is a quieter self. It does not shout. It does not demand recognition. It does not measure work. It simply observes. This self existed before your first achievement. It will exist after your last. It is not impressed by trophies, nor destroyed by losses. It is steady. Meeting this self requires stillness, and stillness feels dangerous to those addicted to achievement, because in stillness, there is no applause, only awareness. But awareness is enough. Conclusion. Returning TOTHE question. So we return to the question, who are you without what you do? If the answer scares you, that's honest. If the answer feels empty, that's understandable. But maybe the goal is not to immediately answer. Maybe the goal is to slowly separate, to allow space between I and achieve, to say, I experience success, instead of, I am success. I experience failure, instead of, I am failure. In that space, identity breathes, burnout softens, ego loosens, and something more stable emerges. You can still build empires. You can still chase greatness, but you no longer need it to prove you exist, because existence is not earned. It precedes achievement. And when your identity no longer depends on applause, success becomes lighter, failure becomes survivable, and you finally meet yourself, not as a performer, but as a being. And perhaps that is the greatest achievement of all.